Yeah, there was a few exposés recently that were really interesting. One of them was like some company was claiming it's like high quality Japanese steel knives. Forget the name of the company, but somebody did an investigation and were like, this isn't high quality. This isn't Japanese steel. They're flat out lying. And a lot of YouTubers were pushing this stuff and podcasters were pushing this stuff. And everybody, you know, you look like a fucking dunce when you get caught like that.
But for knives, like, is it sharp? Does it cut things? Like, what are we talking about? Like, a knife is a simple thing. Like,
that's true. If you're going to make a claim, though, it's got to hold up. You know what I mean?
I guess so.
You can't say it's sourced from this place and it's not sourced from there.
Right.
You know, you're getting some cheap-ass steel and it's supposed to be high levels. It's just fucking, it's sketchy. It's not right.
Yeah, well, this is like, there's always going to be that, right? It's always going to be hard to figure out what's valuable and what's not valuable.
The other thing was, they were selling, like, you can become a lord in Scotland or something like that. Remember that? Do you know what I'm talking about? There were,
yeah.
People were doing the ads, and it was, I remember looking at it the first time, like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking? It's like the same thing, like, oh, buy a star.
Right.
Remember that?
Right.
It's like, bitch, you didn't just buy a star for $17.99 or whatever.
Like, there is a very fucking robust system where they name stars. They're not going to name the Kyle Kulinski star. You know, they just give you a piece of paper and you spent $500 for that or whatever it is. Yeah, it's an interesting world when it comes to advertising. It's an interesting world when you're trying to figure out like what's legit and what's not.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think there's degrees, and the thing I respect the most is if people only do, hey, I use this, I like this.
Well, we were talking last night. You guys were explaining to me about this Indian guy who's one of the richest men in the world.
Oh, yeah. So Krystal knows more about that than I do, but apparently the guy he's the fourth richest guy in the world, giant dude, and his whole company is coming out now is just a total scam. The whole thing's a scam. Yeah. There's a lot of this that goes on, Joe. There's a lot of this, crazy fucking scam artist bullshit. A lot of our economy is just scam artists. I mean, look at the 2008 crash, right?
Yeah.
That was all just because total lack of regulation. Everybody thought Wall Street's the smartest guys in the room, bro. They're just doing what's right by everybody. It's like, no, they're the greediest fuckers in the room.
Adani, how the billionaire's empire lost $100 billion in days. Holy shit. So, Indian billionaire, how do you say his name? Gautam Adani has sought to reassure investors after his company pulled a surprise by calling off its share sale. On Wednesday, Adani Enterprises said it would return $2.5 billion raised from the sale to investors. The decision will not impact our existing operations and future plans, Mr. Adani has said. The move caps an eventful week, which began with a U.S. investment firm making fraud claims against Adani Group firms. So these fraud claims is what Krystal was explaining last night.
Yeah, it's like a very reputable group that has exposed scams previously, and they did this whole detailed report explaining how his whole company is fraudulent, and now, the market's reacting to that.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And is it legal? Scams? Like, there's some scams that are like
multi-level marketing. Yeah, they're legal technically, but they really shouldn't be. Even stock buybacks. Stock buybacks started in like the 1980s. Ronald Reagan legalized them, and previously they were like, we can't allow this. This is crazy. You're just like artificially pumping up your own stock price. But now we allow them.
So how does that work?
I don't know the specifics of how the stock buyback thing works. I just know in the 1980s there was a good video from Robert Reich. R-E-I-C-H, where he explains the way stock buybacks work, but they were illegal until the 1980s, then they allowed them. The gist of it is like a company artificially bolsters up its own stock price by like buying shares of its own company, as opposed to the way it used to work is like you would take that money that you have and you just like reinvest it into your company in a legitimate way, like you pay the workers more, or you do more research and development, or you expand, and then that they don't do that anymore. It's all just like, hey, let's pay the shareholders off even more by artificially pumping up the price of our own stock and screw the workers.
And it's legal.
And it's legal. That's right. Now it's legal. It wasn't back then. Now it is. Yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Like, how does it all like? Do you envision a real potential time where they get money out of politics and that these kind of things become illegal again and that there's some sort of sanity is achieved?
So, I mean, that's a great question. I am of the belief that the best we could do, and maybe this is a little bit of a pessimistic viewpoint, but it really is where I'm at least at the moment. Maybe I'm wrong, but there are countries that have sort of achieved significantly better systems in my estimation. Like, I think the Scandinavian region, they're just much better systems overall. People self-report being way happier. These are all countries that have, free healthcare, free education. The workforces are almost entirely unionized, so they do what's called sectoral bargaining, so they set wages across an entire industry. And what happens in that scenario, they don't even have minimum wage laws in these countries because they don't need it, because everybody's part of the union. They make more than whatever a minimum wage would be. And so when I look at those systems, I think, like, that's what I like, because, there was a time, too, in the U.S. with FDR, with the New Deal, we were on that path. We were on the path of, like, we're going to create a vibrant, thriving social democracy here. We're going to have beautiful infrastructure. People are going to get paid well. We're going to have a thriving middle class. And then with the neoliberal era, all of that was rolled back. You have the introduction of money into politics. You have basically, we became a giant corporatocracy where billionaires and corporations run the show. People never get the things that they actually want. So in my opinion, what you need is sort of like a grassroots movement on specific issues to achieve specific wins. So, one of my big things is universal health care. We are literally the only developed country in the world that doesn't have universal health care. There's a Commonwealth Fund study that comes out every few years, and they find that we rank 11th out of 11 of the countries that they study when it comes to our healthcare system. So we know how to do it, and there are experts in the world who can construct much better systems, but we don't do it, again, because of the influence of money in politics. The health insurance industry buys the politicians, and so they keep scamming. I mean, Big Pharma is like the biggest scam going. For over the past 20 years, you've had a situation where they make sorry, hold on one sec. Over the past 20 years, it's all tax money that funds new medicine. All that comes out of tax dollars. So what happens is you have grants go to universities, and they do the research, come up with the new drugs. Then Big Pharma swoops in, buys up the intellectual property rights for those things, and then sells it back to us at a colossal profit. So we pay for the research up front, and then they charge us on the back end. It's crazy. So there's an example. I covered a story recently. There's a drug in the UK, a cancer drug coming out of the UK. It costs about $200 in the UK. This is a drug that's existed for decades now. We pay $38,000 for that drug here.
Holy shit.
Total scam. It's a total fucking scam. You can look it up. It was a Raw Story article. It's a drug for a specific kind of cancer. Type in, like, Raw Story 38,000 cancer drug, $38,000 cancer drug. Yeah, and that's just one example, Joe. I mean, there's so many examples of, like, it's just a giant scam. They're a middleman.
$38,398 for a single shot of a very old cancer drug. $38,000. That is so crazy.